Hello friends, this is Growl. I've been playing the War Within Alpha and devouring nearly every news article, piece of content coming out for this expansion. I'm really excited, mainly because of the direction World of Warcraft has been heading over the last few years. I think Blizzard is finally starting to embrace the alt-friendliness and slowly doing things to make the game more accessible, like reducing how long a dungeon is, removing some of the button bloat in classes that have too many keybinds, and just making it easier to play multiple characters. The player retention graph during Dragonflight is the best it's been in a while, and I hope this trend continues. That being said, I think it's important that things stay on the right track. Dragonflight was the healing expansion that rebuilt the sort of new, modern structure of WoW. A good structure, though, isn't enough. I want to see them hammer in some of the most fun aspects of WoW and really develop a killer experience over the next 3 expansion World Soul Saga thing. As a quick disclaimer, I'm not a lore guy. All the stuff I'm going to be talking about is focusing on the mechanical aspects of the game. There are 3 major changes or things that I want to see covered in the War Within, and the first is going to be about hero talents. If you're someone who plays a lot of different specs, you probably noticed the same thing I did when you were reading over or watching the new hero talents. Some classes have hero talents that are super cool, maybe cosmetically you like them or gameplay changing, while others are like, just kind of a bunch of random passives, and it leaves a bit to be desired. To me, the preservation evoker trees are compelling and interesting. They change up the way the abilities work, and they also sort of fit the flavor of the other specs. The Resto Druid trees, however, are just like a pile of passive buffs and abilities that you're not even really thinking about or even seeing. When it comes to complexity though, I don't think that's really a bad thing. Druid has a ton of keybinds. It's one of the more difficult healers with a just massive utility kit. And at the same time, preservation, some people said it was a little bit too simple and needed some more depth. So not every class needs to have this complicated hero tree with a bunch of different things, but at the same time, I think every hero tree needs to be fun and unique, which brings me to my first suggestion. Every hero talent tree in the War Within needs to have at least one customized and themed ability to that tree. Something with unique sounds, animations, something that only that hero tree has, so you and honestly everyone else around you know that you're playing that tree. The Void Weaver tree for Discipline Priest is a good example. It has a node that upgrades Smite into Void Blast. What does Void Blast do? It's the same thing as Smite. You press it and it does damage. Yeah, it's a little bit more damage type is different, but it doesn't change the way you play. I mean, if you need a filler, you spam Smite. It feels different though. There's like shadow shooting out of your hands and it's just a completely different sound that plays. You feel like a Void Weaver. You're mixing discipline and shadow. Even though you didn't complicate things at all, it feels like I made that choice of being a Void Weaver. I'm a big fan of the social spectacle aspects of the abilities. I know some people complain about visibility and it's definitely a problem. I mean within reason, but I do kind of want my teammates to see that cool shadow stuff. I want them to be like, what the heck? Are you a shadow priest? To me, that would be like a huge win in my book if you feel and appear as that choice that you made. That way they don't necessarily have to complicate each choice with tons of different gameplay additions or keybinds or whatever. Next, on to Delves. Delves, I think, are one of the biggest wins and losses simultaneously in the new expansion. It's really big that they're realizing this underserved market of players who play solo or more casually. The biggest thing is that it's helping you gear characters and alts without having to commit to group content. This might be a hot topic, but I think raids and dungeons in World of Warcraft are good enough that they stand on their own. I think people would do them even if they weren't forced to do them for gear, just to make their character stronger. I mean, look at stuff like the Hall of Fame raiding and High Mythic Plus. Both have very little rewards in terms of rewards to push your Raider.io score or your guild rank up, but tons and tons of people do it and they enjoy it every season. I'm glad that they're gatekeeping gear less and allow you to get a little bit better gear just messing around in the open world. Personally, I think they should let you get even better gear from easy stuff. I don't really like the idea of gatekeeping gear. You know, maybe it should take a long time to grind it out, but I don't see anything wrong with someone who invests a lot of time in their character to have good gear, even if they're mostly investing it by themselves in the open world. That's kind of a subject for another video though. Here's where I think delves fall short though. I'm hearing everyone talk about the rewards and using it as justification for why delves are the good addition to the game. Unfailable grind content that simply is like a loot pinata that you repeat over and over does not make it good. Nothing about repeating delves is going to be fun, and the people that are doing it only for the rewards, I mean, it's just a waste of time. Exploring delves might be cool while you're leveling up, you know, hey, look at this cave, let's go into it. But after like, honestly, the first week, I think participation and excitement in the delves is just gonna fall flat. And I think that's a really bad thing considering it's the flagship system being introduced with the game. To be clear, the problem with delves is the objectives. They just aren't unique or interesting enough to maintain to be some sort of like end game pillar or repeatable format. Okay, here's a cave, kill 12 kobolds. Okay, here's a new cave, click 10 chests. It's just like, hey, this is a big cave with a quest in it. Not, oh wow, this is a new thing, or oh, I beat this, I wonder what the higher difficulty is. Where the devs fall short every single time in all of these expansion systems when, you know, Horrific Visions or Torghast, now delves, is that the content is not catered specific to your role. When you play a warlock, you don't want to have to worry about walking around and gathering mobs and, okay, how do I survive? And let me tank these and I have to self-heal and let me pick all these flowers. You know, no one wants to walk around and pick up candles, okay? You just want to blast. When you play a warlock, you just want to summon demons or fire and just like blast stuff, right? And obviously this is true for healers and tanks too. These sorts of solo content totally misses the mark for healers and tanks. I think that's obvious as well. But I even think it's underserved for DPS. And this is the reason for my major suggestion, number 2 in the War Within. Delve objectives should be role specific, tailored to what your class does and your spec, and revolve around your ability to play your class. If you're not getting what I'm saying, maybe I'll try and paint a picture here. You enter a delve as a mage. Bran and his crew are trying to drill through a massive door. The noise is attracting some nearby Nerubians, and mobs start spawning and rushing the crew. They aren't necessarily attacking you, maybe there's swirlies on the ground or some frontals that you have to dodge, similar to what it would be like if you were playing in a team in a dungeon or a raid. You're blasting all the mobs down, but the crew basically just dies instantly, and you're like, what the heck is that? Then you go back in, you're kind of looking, okay, let me change some AoE talents, let me use a flask and some consumables. Then you last a little bit longer, it seems within reason, but you still end up dying. You notice there's like some casters that are doing heavy damage that you might need to focus fire down. Then the next attempt, you focus them, or you use your interrupts when you can. You're actually concentrating on your rotation. You're trying not to overcap your resources, using your cooldowns at the right time. And then just as the crew seems like they're gonna fall, you finish off the ambush and then it opens the door and you get the reward. Sounds like something that was in WoW before, right? I mean, there's a reason the Mage Tower is remembered so fondly among players. Role-tailored content is good, not only because it makes you feel like you're playing your class, but they can tailor fit the difficulty much better to challenge the player. And I keep hearing this thing, delves aren't for me, or oh, this is for casual players. Just because somebody prefers to play by themselves, doesn't have a group, doesn't play that much, or is more casual towards the game, doesn't mean they don't want to be challenged. I think that's a complete misnomer. I want to dispel the idea that there's a bunch of just random drooling people walking around in World of Warcraft that can barely kill one mob at a time. I actually think the unfortunate truth is that WoW has tons and tons of solo content, but what it lacks is solo content that challenges you and gets you to play your character and engage with gameplay that is World of Warcraft. I get that we can only preview the lower levels of delves, we don't know what the higher difficulties are like, but when you have objectives like collect 12 candles, I just don't see how it'll be fun or how it'll scale with difficulty, you know? Since you have to essentially tank and live through and pull every mob, I mean, what is a high delve gonna be? Every single mob has tons of HP and damage, so you have to fight one at a time and then you like heal up after? Like, is that really gonna be fun? Anyway, to shortcut my endless yapping about delves and single player stuff, I want to switch over to the content release. Once they get the single player situation figured out with delves, I feel like WoW will be in an awesome place. You'll have good solo content that you can do that teaches you your character and challenges you, gets you rewards, small scale group stuff that you can do with your close friends, doing dungeons and Mythic Plus, whether you prefer, you know, the M0 untimed, the new format that's going to be a lot more difficult for M0, or you're doing M+. And then you have the, you know, the big raids, whether you want to be in a sweaty Mythic guild, or you're just, you know, hanging out on a Friday night drinking in a casual, you know, normal or heroic raiding guild. I also think that gearing is in a really good place. They removed Titan Forge, they implemented crafting, allow you to sort of pick and choose pieces. The weekly vault gives you some really good rewards that are fed throughout the season. Classes are being improved with the implementation of the new talent system. Honestly, there's a lot of pieces that are in place right now for this game to own. It's time to ramp up the content. My third and final suggestion, what I want to see, we need a more exciting content release schedule with new mini dungeons or mini raids. It's just stuff that gets added all the time and halfway. I feel like over the last couple expansions, the content release is way too predictable and way too slow. All right, the new expansion's out. There's 8 dungeons in a raid. Okay, we wait a season. Okay, there's a new raid, same dungeons. All right, a new questing zone where we gotta grind for an augment rune. Okay, season 3, time for the mega dungeon. It's like, why do we have to wait an entire year in each expansion to get one new single dungeon that you can't even play in Mythic Plus until the following season after that? Also, does every dungeon or content that they make need to be so formulaic? Like, does every dungeon have to be a Mythic Plus? Why can't they just make a dungeon that's like, you know, hard and isn't in Mythic Plus and they just, you know, release it? What about like a 5-man like dungeon raid hybrid thing where it's just like, you know, 2 really hard, like long multi-phase boss fights that you do as a 5-man? Why can't we just have like a random mini raid in the middle of the tier for people who are happy with their progress but kind of just like want something to do with their guild? Like, what happened to all of this stuff that used to get added in older expansions of World of Warcraft? The game would be so much more exciting if we were always kept on our toes like this. Waking up to news where something you didn't even know got added and there's a new way to play and interact with your friends is like massive. That's our crack. And for sure, this would be an awesome testing grounds for new ideas and formats and stuff they can add in the future. They might try something, and if it doesn't work or it isn't well received, who cares? Scrap it, move on, don't do that again. I really dislike how everything that gets released is always like solved and data mined and it's just formulaic. I want to be surprised. I want to feel like I'm part of a world where things just happen and, oh, this huge dragon just showed up and this is like a 1 boss raid or a, you know, a 5-man raid or whatever. I want the developers to be throwing us curveballs and challenge what we know about World of Warcraft and what's going to come. Although this whole thing might seem like far-fetched and I'm kind of dreaming, I think this is actually the suggestion of the 3 that is most realistic. The last year in WoW has been crazy with the release of Plunderstorm and Miss of Pandaria Remix. In the recent interview that Holly had and Mr. GM, she made it clear that there previously was like some sort of experimental team, and now they are just the live team. There's just people always looking at the current patch and in charge of creating cool stuff for people who play the live game. Honestly, the biggest complaint that I heard about Plunderstorm was I just don't like that type of content. While it's true that not everyone is gonna like a battle royale in a WoW, it was a huge hit for people who enjoyed it. And I think if we had in the back of our minds that there's constantly new stuff coming out, people would be a lot more optimistic about these things. Like, oh, I didn't really enjoy Plunderstorm, but you know, Blizzard could do something in the next couple months, or let's see what they come out with in the next patch. Alright, that's enough of that. On this channel, I usually just like to talk strategy and healer stuff. I generally just accept the game for how it is and sort of play it. I don't really like writing these like open letter to Blizzard or whatever, but with the coming expansion, I think all of us really have on our minds what we're hoping to see and what we think can make things better. I also think it seems as if Blizzard has been doing a much better job listening to the community, so who knows, maybe somebody watches this. Overall, if it wasn't obvious already, I'm still super happy with the game. Let me know what ideas of mine you think suck or what you think the major improvements they could make going into the War Within, and looking forward to jumping into this new expansion with all of you. Happy keying, friends.